The Mississippi Hayride Crash. Halloween night 2016 in Chunky, Mississippi turned into a nightmare for the Shaver family and everyone on a holiday hayride. It was around 7:45 in the evening when families dressed in costumes were riding on a flatbed trailer being pulled by a Jeep along Highway 80. This was a tradition in Chunky, a small town of just a few hundred people, where hayrides were how families celebrated Halloween together. Then, a Ford F-150 pickup truck came up behind them and slammed into the back of the trailer at full speed. The impact was devastating. People were thrown from the trailer onto the highway. Children in Halloween costumes were scattered across the road. The sound of metal crushing and people screaming filled the night air. 33-year-old Christina Shaver died along with her 2 young daughters, 8-year-old Bailey and 2-year-old Brooke. All 3 were killed either at the scene or while waiting for medical helicopters to arrive. 7 other people were seriously injured, many with life-threatening wounds. 3 helicopters and multiple ambulances rushed to transport the wounded to hospitals in Meridian and Jackson. The tragedy was even more heartbreaking because Christina had just lost her husband Carrie a few months earlier in July. Their obituaries tell the story. Carrie's death notice from July listed his wife Christina and daughters Bailey, Mackenzie, and Brooke. By November, 3 more names had been added to the family's list of losses. Mackenzie, their surviving daughter, lost her entire immediate family within 5 months. The Indiana State Fairgrounds Coliseum explosion. On Halloween night 1963, over 4,300 people packed into the Indiana State Fairgrounds Coliseum in Indianapolis to watch the opening night of Holiday on Ice. It was being promoted as Shriners Night, and families filled the arena to watch figure skaters perform. The show was spectacular, with colorful lighting and elaborate sets creating a magical atmosphere. Then, just after 11 p.m., during the finale of the show, a massive explosion ripped through the building. A 100-pound propane tank stored in the concession area beneath the south side seating had been leaking gas. The leak came from a faulty valve on an improperly stored tank. The gas drifted toward an electric popcorn warmer, and when it made contact with the heating element, the result was catastrophic. The blast sent a 40-foot orange flame shooting through the seats. It propelled audience members, concrete slabs, and seating 60 feet through the air. People landed on the ice below. Massive chunks of concrete rained down on crowded seating areas on all sides of the arena. Some spectators were buried alive under slabs of concrete. Others were thrown so far they landed in completely different sections of the arena. 54 people died instantly from the explosion, killed by the blast itself, flying debris, or severe burns. But the horror didn't end there. As people tried to evacuate and rescuers worked to save trapped victims, the remaining propane tanks in the storage area exploded in a second blast. This caused even more destruction and casualties. By the time the rescue operations ended, 74 people had died and nearly 400 others were injured. The Indianapolis Fire Department had to bring in a mobile crane to lift the massive concrete slab still covering victims. Emergency workers set up a temporary hospital in the cattle barn next to the Coliseum. The coroner's office turned the ice floor into a temporary morgue, lining up bodies covered in blankets. A photographer who arrived just 9 minutes after the explosion described the scene as looking like a movie set because of all the colorful Holiday on Ice lighting. But when he got inside and saw the fire, debris, bodies, and blood, the horror was all too real. One reporter who had been attending the show with his wife wrote that it was the worst thing he had seen since combat in World War II. 15-year-old John Staten attended with his parents, grandmother, and siblings. The explosion killed his father, mother, brother, and grandmother. His 9-year-old sister Barbara survived, but spent weeks in the hospital with severe burns. The Seoul Itaewon crowd crush. October 29, 2022 was the first Halloween celebration in Seoul, South Korea after strict COVID-19 restrictions had been lifted. Young people were excited to finally party again after years of lockdowns and social distancing. The Itaewon neighborhood, known for its nightlife and international atmosphere, became the destination for what would be one of the biggest Halloween celebrations the city had ever seen. By evening, an estimated 100,000 people had descended on the narrow streets of Itaewon. The area wasn't designed to handle crowds of this size. The streets were tight, lined with bars, clubs, and restaurants. There were no barriers, no crowd control measures, and police had only dispatched 137 officers to manage the massive gathering. Around 10:20 p.m., the situation turned deadly in a narrow downhill alley near the Hamilton Hotel. This alley was only about 10.5 feet wide, and it became a bottleneck as thousands of people tried to move through it at once. People at the front of the crowd couldn't move forward. People at the back kept pushing, not realizing what was happening ahead of them. The crowd density reached a critical point where people couldn't breathe. They were packed so tightly that when some people fell, others toppled onto them. It happened fast, like dominoes falling. People were crushed standing up, unable to even fall down because the crowd was so dense. Some described being lifted off their feet entirely, carried by the pressure of bodies around them. Witnesses reported hearing people shouting, "Don't push!" from the front, while voices from the back yelled, "Push forward." Those caught in the middle were trapped with no way to escape. The crush went on for hours before emergency services could establish full control. By the time rescue operations concluded, 159 people had died and nearly 200 others were injured. The victims were mostly young adults in their 20s and 30s. Among them were 27 foreign nationals from countries around the world who had come to Seoul as students or tourists. Emergency workers and even U.S. military police who happened to be on patrol in the area performed CPR on victims lying in the streets. The scene was chaotic and heartbreaking. Some victims died of suffocation while standing upright in the crowd. Others were trampled after falling. Many had come out for a fun Halloween night with friends and never made it home. Jordan Morlan's Halloween prank. 16-year-old Jordan Morlan of Louisville, Kentucky loved Halloween. He was creative and artistic, and he especially enjoyed decorating his family's home in the Fern Creek neighborhood for the holiday. On September 22, 2013, Jordan was helping put up Halloween decorations in the front yard. Among the decorations was a noose hanging from a tree, a common but controversial Halloween decoration meant to look spooky. Jordan had been playfully pranking his younger sister Megan throughout the day while they decorated. He decided to pull one more prank by pretending to hang himself with the decorative noose. Jordan slipped the noose around his neck, thinking he would scare his sister when she looked outside. But the moment he put his weight on the rope, something went terribly wrong. The noose tightened around his neck and pressed against his windpipe and jugular vein. Within 20 to 30 seconds, oxygen was cut off from his brain. Jordan became disoriented and lost consciousness almost immediately. His feet were touching the ground, so he probably thought he was safe. But the pressure on his neck was enough to make him pass out. When his sister saw him, she thought at first it was just another prank because Jordan had been joking around all day. She ran inside to tell their mother, Ginger Rodriguez. Ginger also initially assumed Jordan was playing around, telling her daughter he was probably just pranking them. But when she went outside and saw him, she realized immediately this was real. Jordan was unconscious and drooling. She tried desperately to cut him down, but couldn't get him lowered before emergency services arrived. Jordan was rushed to the hospital where he was put on a ventilator. He had fallen into a coma from the oxygen deprivation. Doctors fought to save him, but after 12 hours, his organs began to fail. The damage to his brain from those critical seconds without oxygen was too severe. Jordan died Monday morning at University of Louisville Hospital. The coroner ruled his death an accident. Jordan was an honor student, a member of his high school's junior ROTC rifle team, and dreamed of serving in the U.S. Marine Corps. His mother told reporters that Jordan loved books, was very artistic, and loved decorating for holidays. The prank that killed him was just him being himself, playful and trying to make his family laugh on a day they were all enjoying together. Aleigha Duvall. 5-year-old Aleigha Duvall was trick-or-treating on Halloween night 2011 in Albany, Kentucky. It was 6:35 in the evening, prime time for young children to be out collecting candy in their costumes. The streets would have been filled with other families doing the same thing, walking house to house, enjoying the crisp autumn evening. Aleigha was trying to cross the street when a Ford Ranger struck her. The impact was severe for such a small child. She was rushed to the hospital with critical injuries, but the trauma was too much for her little body to handle. Almost exactly 24 hours later, Aleigha died from her injuries. The Duvall family's Halloween celebration had turned into every parent's worst nightmare. What should have been an evening of fun and candy collecting became a tragedy that devastated their family and shocked the small community of Albany. The incident led to immediate changes in the area. Local authorities implemented improved traffic control measures during trick-or-treating hours. The community recognized that while Halloween is supposed to be about fun for children, it's also one of the most dangerous nights of the year for kids on foot. Drivers aren't always watching carefully for small children in dark costumes darting between houses and crossing streets. Studies later confirmed what happened to Aleigha was part of a larger pattern. children are more than twice as likely to be hit and killed by cars on Halloween compared to any other night of the year. The hours between 6 and 7 p.m. on October 31st are particularly dangerous, exactly when Aleigha was struck. The Dutcher Funeral Home elevator crash. In October 2011, the Dutcher Funeral Home in Coldwater, Michigan decided to host a Halloween party. The venue seemed perfect for a spooky celebration. What could be creepier than a Halloween party in a funeral home? People dressed in costumes and gathered for what was supposed to be a fun, scary evening. The funeral home had an elevator that connected the first floor to the basement. As the party was in full swing, a group of people got into the elevator to travel between floors. The elevator was carrying multiple passengers when suddenly something went catastrophically wrong. A cable supporting the elevator snapped without warning. The elevator, now with nothing to safely lower it, plummeted more than 10 feet from the first floor down into the basement. The people inside had no time to react or brace themselves. Screams rang out as the elevator fell and crashed at the bottom. The injured were rushed to nearby hospitals. 4 people suffered broken bones from the impact. At least 1 person was diagnosed with a concussion. Given that the elevator fell 10 feet with multiple people inside, it's fortunate that no one was killed. But the injuries were serious enough that the victims faced long recoveries. Did you enjoy this breakdown? Then please subscribe and hit the bell for more.